What would you do if the most protected young man in Providence shoved a 72-year-old judge onto a marble courthouse floor and laughed because his father wore the biggest badge in the city? Drop a comment telling us what sentence you think fits a moment like that, because before this story ends, the man doing the laughing will beg for a kind of mercy he never believed in. At 8:43 on a gray Thursday morning, with courthouse cameras rolling and a hallway full of witnesses frozen in place, Tyler Grayson thought he was untouchable. Hit that subscribe button if you believe nobody's last name should be stronger than the law, because Judge Caprio was about to prove exactly what justice looks like when power finally meets a wall it cannot move. People still talk about that sound. Not the shout, not the curse. The sound of an old man's shoulder striking polished stone under the bronze seal of the Providence Municipal Court. Like this video, if you believe one moment can expose an entire family's lies, because what happened next did more than punish one reckless son. It cracked open a system. And when the truth came out, it was uglier than anyone expected. Share this with someone who needs to see what real accountability looks like, because the footage, the body cam audio, the letters, and the final words from Judge Lorenzo Caprio would become the most talked-about courtroom story Rhode Island had seen in years. By the time the courthouse clock clicked to 8:44, everything had changed. Tyler Grayson was 27 years old, 6'1", broad-shouldered, sharp-jawed, and dressed like a man who had mistaken expensive taste for character. He wore a charcoal Moncler jacket over a white Theory t-shirt, dark denim, and a pair of spotless Common Project sneakers that had never touched anything harder than valet pavement. On his left wrist sat a stainless steel Rolex Submariner, a graduation gift from his father. His black 2024 BMW M5 Competition idled illegally at the curb outside 325 Washington Street, driver's door still open, music pulsing low from its speakers like his ego had spilled into the street before he did. His father, Providence Police Chief Malcolm Grayson, had spent 31 years building a reputation for toughness, command, and image control. He was the kind of man who never loosened his tie in public, the kind who said standards when he meant obedience, the kind who knew every captain, judge, city council member, and television producer by first name. Malcolm had grown up poor in South Providence, worked patrol, then narcotics, then command. He had clawed his way into authority with discipline so hard it had calcified into pride. The city respected him. Some feared him. Most never challenged him. His son had grown up inside that shield. Tyler learned early that rules bent around certain names. Parking tickets vanished. Bar fights became misunderstandings. School suspensions were recast as miscommunications. By 16, he knew which officers would laugh off speeding. By 19, he knew which sergeants answered his father before they answered paperwork. By 24, he had become the kind of man who mistook protection for proof that he deserved it. But that morning he was not at the courthouse for some harmless citation. He was there because of case number PV 264187, State of Rhode Island v. Tyler Malcolm Grayson, reckless endangerment, leaving the scene of an injury accident, witness intimidation, disorderly conduct. The charges came from an incident 6 weeks earlier on August 2, 2026 at 9:17 p.m. at the corner of Benefit Street and Waterman Avenue. That was the night Maria Santos had almost died. Maria Santos was 34, a pediatric emergency nurse at Rhode Island Hospital. She lived in Pawtucket, drove a silver 2017 Honda CR-V with a cracked rear reflector, and worked 12-hour shifts that turned into 14 whenever the pediatric trauma ward overflowed. On the night Tyler Grayson tore down Benefit Street at nearly 52 miles per hour in a 30 zone, Maria had just gotten off a double shift. Her scrub top was folded in her tote bag. Her hair smelled faintly like antiseptic and lavender conditioner. Her 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, held her hand and a half-melted lemon Italian ice from a corner cart. They were in the crosswalk. The BMW came in hard, tires whining, headlights washing the old brick storefronts white. Witnesses later said the driver's window was down and the music was loud enough to rattle glass. Maria yanked Sophie backwards so hard she bruised the child's wrist. The mirror clipped Maria's shoulder and spun her to the pavement. Her ulna fractured near the wrist when she tried to catch herself. Sophie screamed. The cup hit the ground. Lemon ice splashed across the crosswalk like paint. Tyler stopped 20 feet ahead. He looked back, and according to 2 witnesses and 1 recovered phone video, he shouted, "Watch where you're walking." Then he drove away. That alone could have destroyed him in court, but Tyler had made one fatal mistake that night. He had forgotten that not everybody in Providence could be bullied. One of the witnesses was Leon Whitaker. If you've made it this far, drop a comment telling us whether you think the hit and run or the courthouse shove was worse. Because Leon Whitaker's decision that night is the reason any of this ever reached a courtroom at all. Leon was 68, a retired Marine gunnery sergeant with a Bronze Star, a repaired left knee, and a face that looked carved from old cedar. He wore red suspenders when he wasn't in uniform, read spy novels in the courthouse security room, and still polished his shoes until they reflected ceiling lights. He had done 2 tours in Vietnam, buried friends before he turned 22, and spent the last 12 years working as a senior court officer because, as he liked to say, order matters most where pain shows up dressed in good clothes. He had been standing outside Mancini's bakery that night with a paper cup of black coffee when Tyler's BMW nearly killed Maria and Sophie. Leon didn't just see the car. He saw the plate. He wrote it down on the back of a pharmacy receipt with a pen that barely worked. And when the first responding patrol officer seemed strangely hesitant to include that number in his field notes, Leon filed his own written witness statement at the station the next morning, then copied it, dated it, and mailed one version certified to the clerk of court. Men like Leon understood paperwork. Men like Leon understood how truth disappears when power gets nervous. That was how Tyler ended up in Judge Lorenzo Caprio's courtroom on September 18. Judge Caprio was not related to fear. At 72, with silver hair swept neatly back and a voice that never needed volume to command a room, he had spent 41 years on the bench and 11 years before that as a Marine Corps legal officer after serving in Vietnam. The younger clerks knew him as the judge who remembered names. Older attorneys knew him as the judge who never let sentiment outrun principle. The public knew him for courtroom patience, the kind that made angry people speak softer without understanding why. He wore navy suits tailored on Federal Hill, black Capto Allen Edmonds, and a plain gold wedding band polished smooth by decades of habit. His wife Alina had died 3 years earlier after a long battle with ovarian cancer. Since then, he arrived every morning at 7:10, placed her old fountain pen beside his docket, and read case summaries in silence before the doors opened. People called him compassionate. They were right. People also made the mistake of thinking compassionate meant weak. They were always wrong. At 8:31 that morning, when Tyler entered courtroom 2B flanked by his defense attorney Miles Keene, and trailed by the scent of expensive cologne and stale arrogance, Caprio looked at him over half-moon glasses and asked the same question he asked every defendant appearing on first review. "Mr. Grayson, do you understand the charges against you?" Tyler leaned back, smirked. "My attorney does." A few people in the gallery shifted. Caprio did not. "I asked whether you understand them." Tyler shrugged. "I understand I'm being overcharged because some people want a headline." That was the first sign, not the disrespect. Caprio had seen disrespect for 4 decades. It was the confidence, the brittle, polished certainty of a man who had never once sat in a room where the rules applied to him at full strength. Assistant City Prosecutor Elaine Mercer rose from counsel table with a folder thick enough to alarm any honest defendant. Elaine was 44, former Army JAG, precise as a scalpel, and famous in City Hall for never wasting a sentence. She wore a dark green blazer, low heels, and a look that suggested sleep was optional but preparation was not. "Your Honor," she said, "the state moves to admit supplemental surveillance footage from the benefit district and to request immediate review of a witness intimidation complaint filed yesterday evening by Ms. Maria Santos." The courtroom changed temperature. Miles Keene stood up fast. He was competent, careful, and fully aware his client was a grenade with a designer watch. "Your Honor, we have not had sufficient time." "You have it now," Caprio said. Tyler turned toward Maria. That was the second sign. Maria sat in the front row wearing a navy cardigan over a cream blouse, a soft brace under her sleeve, and the look of a woman who had slept badly for 6 straight weeks. Beside her sat Sophie, hair in 2 braids, clutching a tiny stuffed sea turtle. Maria did not look down. She met Tyler's stare directly. Tyler smiled at her. It was not a kind smile. Leon Whitaker saw it from his post by the side door, and later testified that the smile was the moment he checked the retention button on his body camera. Court officers in that building did not record every he-ing, but Leon knew something in the room had gone bad. Then came the third sign. Elaine Mercer lifted her folder. Yesterday, at 6:12 p.m., Ms. Santos received an unsigned, hand-delivered note at her apartment building that reads, and I quote, "Good parents know when to stop talking before their kids get hurt." A gasp moved across the gallery like wind through fabric. Sophie grabbed her mother's hand. Tyler's face changed for less than a second. "Just enough." Judge Caprio saw it. "Mr. Keene," Caprio said quietly, "you will advise your client that if there is any contact, direct or indirect, with witnesses in this matter, I will not treat that lightly." Tyler muttered something. Caprio looked up. "Speak clearly." Tyler smiled again. "I said this is insane." "No," Caprio said. "Insane is threatening a mother because the truth inconveniences you." You could have heard a pen drop. That should have been the end of Tyler's performance. Instead, it became the beginning. Because when Caprio ordered the matter continued to a full evidentiary hearing and refused defense requests to relax Tyler's travel conditions, Tyler stood too quickly, knocked his chair back, and snapped, "You don't get to talk to me like that." The room froze. Miles Keene whispered, "Tyler, stop." Caprio's voice stayed level, "Sit down." Tyler didn't sit. He stepped toward the bench. Leon moved. Elaine rose. Maria pulled Sophie closer. And Chief Malcolm Grayson, who had just entered through the rear doors in full uniform after taking a call in the hallway, stopped dead as every eye in the courtroom swung toward his son. The chief saw exactly what everyone else saw. His son, red-faced and vibrating with the kind of anger that comes from being contradicted in public. Judge Caprio still seated, one hand on the bench. Leon already between them. Miles reaching, too late. Then Caprio stood. Not fast, not dramatically, just enough to meet Tyler at eye level. And in a voice so calm it sliced straight through the tension, he said the first line people would repeat across Providence for months. "Mr. Grayson, borrowed power is still theft." Tyler laughed. A dry, disbelieving laugh. Then he said the 7 words that detonated the room. "You think that robe protects you, old man." Before anyone could breathe, before Miles could grab his sleeve, before Malcolm could shout his name, Tyler shoved Judge Caprio in the chest with both hands. The judge stumbled backward, heel catching the edge of the raised platform. His shoulder struck the wooden rail, then the marble floor beyond it. The crack of impact echoed off the courtroom walls. Elena Caprio's old fountain pen spun off the bench and landed near the seal on the floor. Sophie screamed. Maria stood up so fast her chair tipped. Elaine shouted, "Officer." Leon Whitaker tackled Tyler sideways into counsel table. Papers exploded into the air. The microphone squealed. Someone near the back yelled, "Jesus Christ." Another person began crying. Chief Grayson lunged forward, but not toward the judge, toward his son. And that choice would matter later. If you believe a single instinct can reveal a whole character, like this video right now. Because what Malcolm Grayson did in those next 5 seconds told the city more than any press conference ever could. Instead of dropping to his knees beside the injured judge, Malcolm grabbed Tyler by both shoulders and barked, "What did you do?" Not, "Are you okay, Judge?" Not, "Call medical." Not, "Help him up." "What did you do?" It was the voice of a man terrified of consequences, not ashamed of harm. Leon had Tyler face down by then, one knee in his back despite his own damaged leg protesting under the strain. Tyler cursed, thrashed, and shouted, "Get off me! Get off me!" Court Clerk Tessa Monroe hit the emergency alarm under the desk. 2 patrol officers from the lobby sprinted in. One of them, Officer Dana Ruiz, drew close enough to hear Tyler spit the sentence that would later make every local station lead with this story for 3 straight nights. "My father runs this city." On Dana Ruiz's body camera, the words are crystal clear. Caprio did not cry out. That part stunned people most when they watched the footage later. At 72, after hitting marble hard enough to fracture his left distal radius and reopen scar tissue along his shoulder from an old service injury, he sucked in one sharp breath, rolled to his side, and asked the terrified clerk one question. "Is the child all right?" Not himself. The child. Sophie Santos, still shaking in the first row. That was the moment the gallery broke emotionally. The whispers started, then the anger, then the absolute cold certainty that the city had just watched a line get crossed that could not be painted over. Paramedics arrived at 8:51. Caprio's left wrist was already swelling. Blood ran in a narrow line from a cut above his temple. His face had gone pale, but his eyes were steady. As EMT Jordan Phelps knelt beside him and fitted the temporary splint, Caprio looked at Tyler, who was now cuffed and standing under guard near the rail, and said the second quote that would go everywhere by lunchtime. "A courtroom is the one room where your last name must arrive unarmed." Tyler stared at him. But for the first time, he did not have a comeback. Because he had just shoved a decorated Marine veteran, a sitting judge in open court in front of police, witnesses, a child, a prosecutor, a clerk, a bailiff, and his own father. And the cameras had seen all of it. Or so everyone thought. What nobody in that room knew yet was that the shove was only the middle of the story. Because by noon, investigators would uncover footage from the hallway outside Courtroom 2B, audio from Leon Whitaker's body cam, a deleted message thread recovered from Tyler's phone, and a report buried 6 weeks earlier that connected the courthouse assault to the night Maria Santos hit the pavement on Benefit Street. And when Judge Caprio returned from the hospital with a cast on his wrist and a decision in his heart, Tyler Grayson's life would stop moving in the direction his father had planned. It would start moving toward the truth. At Rhode Island Hospital, room 412 smelled like antiseptic, coffee, and rain blowing faintly through an old window seal. Judge Caprio sat upright in bed with his left forearm in a fiberglass cast, his shoulder strapped, and a bandage above his eyebrow. He had refused stronger pain medication after the first dose. "I prefer clarity," he told the resident. The resident, who recognized him instantly, later said he had never seen a man of that age look both so injured and so immovable. Outside the room, reporters gathered by the elevator bank. Inside, Caprio's longtime clerk, Tessa Monroe, stood near the television trying not to cry. She was 31, smart, fast, and usually impossible to rattle, but she had watched her judge hit the floor and heard the sound. That sound stays with people. "Judge," she said softly, "the mayor called. The chief's office called. 3 stations want a statement. Internal Affairs is requesting access to the courtroom feed." Caprio adjusted his glasses with his good hand. "And Miss Santos?" "She and her daughter are safe. Officer Ruiz arranged a patrol outside their building." Caprio nodded once. "Good." Tessa hesitated. "They're saying Chief Grayson might hold a press conference before noon." Caprio turned his eyes to the muted television, where Tyler's BMW filled the screen under a chyron reading police chief's son, charged after courtroom attack. "They will say what they say," Caprio replied. "Truth is not required to hurry." That line spread almost as fast as the story. But the truth did not take long. At 11:26 a.m., Officer Dana Ruiz turned over her body cam footage to state investigators after a lieutenant quietly suggested she route it through departmental review first. Dana Ruiz was 29, former National Guard military police, meticulous, and not especially interested in career suicide. But she had also watched Tyler Grayson jerk against his cuffs and heard Chief Malcolm Grayson hiss, "Say nothing," close enough to pick up on the camera mic. Dana understood exactly what happened next if the chain of custody got compromised. So she bypassed the department and delivered the footage directly to the Attorney General's intake unit with a signed statement. That decision changed the case. By 1:10 p.m., Special Investigator Harold Benton had synchronized Dana's body cam with hallway surveillance from the second-floor corridor outside Courtroom 2. The footage showed Tyler pacing before the hearing, jaw tight, phone in hand. At 8:24, he received a text. At 8:25, he looked toward Maria and Sophie entering the courtroom. At 8:26, he leaned close to Chief Grayson, who had just come up the back stairs, and said something that the hallway camera couldn't hear but Dana's body cam later captured once the door opened. "If he embarrasses me in there," Tyler said, "I'll handle it myself." Chief Grayson's reply was quieter. "You will keep your mouth shut." He didn't say, "You will respect the court." He didn't say, "You apologize." He said, "Keep your mouth shut." The difference was a canyon. Then the footage showed something nobody had expected. At 8:28, before the hearing began, Tyler peeled away from his attorney and walked directly toward Maria Santos, who was sitting on the bench outside the courtroom braiding Sophie's hair tighter with trembling fingers. Tyler leaned down. He smiled. His lips moved. Sophie recoiled. Maria stood. Leon Whitaker immediately stepped between them. The camera had no audio, but Dana Ruiz's body cam did, faintly from farther down the hall. Tyler whispered, "You should have taken the settlement." Maria said, "Stay away from my daughter." Leon said, "Back up, son." Tyler laughed, "Or what?" That exchange alone would have justified revoking pretrial release. But there was more. At 2:02 p.m., digital forensics rec. Over deleted iMessages from Tyler's phone, backed up automatically to a linked tablet in his apartment on Benefit Street. One message thread with his friend Chase Hanley, time-stamped 7:48 a.m. that morning, read, "Old man wants to play hero. Watch what happens when he tries me." At 8:11 a.m., Tyler sent, "Dad says keep cool, not promising anything." At 8:46 a.m., 3 minutes after the shove, Chase texted, "Bro, what did you do?" No response. That would have been enough to sink most defendants. But then investigator Benton opened a supplemental file attached to the original August 2 Street incident, and the story got worse. Much worse. Buried behind routine paperwork was a 2-page incident addendum, never forwarded to the prosecutor's intake team. It had been written by Patrol Officer Jason Perrin at 10:41 p.m. on the night Maria Santos was struck. Perrin described locating Tyler Grayson's black BMW in a private underground garage on Bowen Street. The passenger side mirror was cracked. There was a yellow stain consistent with melted Italian ice along the lower door panel. A child's pink plastic spoon was lodged in the tire tread. Perrin also wrote that Tyler showed slurred speech, watery eyes, strong odor of alcohol, and visible white powder residue beneath left nostril. No field sobriety test was administered. No chemical test was requested. The report ended with a note that said, "Per command instruction, subject released to family custody pending follow-up." The command signature line was blank. That blank line made half the state sit up straight. Because everybody in Providence knew what it meant when paperwork stopped being specific. It meant someone powerful had stepped into the room. By late afternoon, the Attorney General's office announced it was taking over the prosecution. Chief Malcolm Grayson canceled his press conference. Then he reappeared at 5:30 outside police headquarters, face drawn tight, flanked by union representatives and city council, and read from a prepared statement under hot camera lights. This morning's events were unacceptable. No one is above the law, including members of my own family. He said the words people expected. But he did not answer questions. He did not explain the missing report chain. He did not explain why his son had been released the night of August 2. He did not explain why Tyler felt safe threatening a witness. And he did not explain why, on body cam audio, his first instinct had been to protect the fallout instead of the judge on the floor. Providence did not miss that. Neither did Judge Caprio. 2 days later, with his cast visible under the sleeve of a dark suit and a slight stiffness in his left shoulder, Caprio returned to court for the emergency bail review. The building was packed. Reporters lined the street by 6:00 a.m. Protesters held signs that read "BADGES are not birthrights" and "Justice for Maria, justice for the court." Every seat in the gallery filled. Retired judges came. Young law students came. Veterans came. Off-duty officers came and stood in the back with unreadable faces. Everyone in the room knew this moment would go viral long before lunch. Tyler entered in county transport khakis, not designer denim. His hair was less controlled. His jaw looked swollen where Leon's takedown had driven him into the table edge. He still tried to wear defiance, but it no longer fit the same way. Judge Caprio took the bench at exactly 9:00. He did not glance at the cameras. He looked straight at Tyler. "Mr. Grayson," he said, "I have reviewed the footage, the witness statements, and the supplemental evidence. I will say this once. Your father's title has no jurisdiction in my conscience." There it was. Another line the city would never forget. Like this video, if you believe that sentence should be framed in every courtroom in America, because the hearing that followed turned a public scandal into something much deeper. A forced reckoning with what unchecked protection does to a human soul. Elaine Mercer moved first. She requested full remand pending trial on new charges: felony assault on a judicial officer, intimidation of a witness, obstruction, and violation of release conditions. She spoke clinically, but the gravity in her voice carried. Then she called Maria Santos. Maria walked to the witness stand with her brace visible beneath her sleeve. Sophie sat in the front row beside a victim advocate and clutched the same stuffed turtle. The courtroom clerk swore Maria in. Elaine asked, "Ms. Santos, did the defendant approach you outside courtroom 2B on September 18? "He did." "What did he say?" Maria swallowed. "He told me I should have taken the settlement." The gallery murmured. Elaine let that sit. Did anyone from the defense or the Grayson family ever formally offer you a settlement through counsel? No. Then how would the defendant know you had been approached? Maria looked directly at Tyler. "Because the man who came to my building used your words." Tyler looked away. Maria's voice shook once, then settled into steel. She described the night on Benefit Street, the impact, Sophie screaming the nights after, the child waking from nightmares whenever she heard engines rev outside their apartment. She described the note left downstairs. She described the smile Tyler gave her in court. Then Elaine asked the question that tightened every throat in the room. When Judge Caprio fell, what did your daughter do? Maria closed her eyes for 1 second. She thought he died. There was a long silence. Even the reporters stopped typing. Then Miles Keene cross-examined carefully, trying to establish stress, perception, distance. Maria answered everything without embellishment. She never raised her voice. She never looked triumphant, which made her harder to dismiss. After Maria came Leon Whitaker. Leon took the stand in his dark court officer uniform with ribbons from service pinned discreetly inside his wallet, not on display. He didn't need decoration. His posture was evidence enough. Elaine asked him to describe Tyler's demeanor before the hearing. Leon said, agitated, entitled, hunting for an audience. Somebody in the back whispered, "Damn." Elaine asked, "Why did you activate your body camera?" Leon answered, "Because I know what men look like when they think consequence is optional." Another line. Another quote. Then he described the shove. Was Judge Caprio threatening the defendant in any way? No. What was Judge Caprio doing immediately before impact? Standing upright and telling him to sit down. Did the defendant appear to lose balance accidentally? Leon stared at Tyler. No, ma'am. He planted his feet and drove through him. That phrasing stayed with people, drove through him. Leon then described tackling Tyler and injuring his own knee in the process. An MRI later confirmed a grade 2 sprain and torn meniscal tissue. At 68, with old marine damage already living in that joint, recovery would not be simple. Miles Keene tried to soften it. Officer Whitaker, isn't it true that the situation unfolded quickly and emotions were high? Leon looked at him without hostility. Counselor, gravity is quick, rage takes longer. The gallery exhaled in a wave. Then came Dana Ruiz. Dana's testimony was the one Chief Malcolm Grayson had probably feared most. She authenticated the body cam footage. She identified her own voice, Tyler's voice, Leon's commands, and the Chief's whispered, "Say nothing." She confirmed she had preserved the footage independently because she believed the evidence required immediate outside review. Elaine asked, "Did anyone in the Providence Police Department instruct you not to preserve or disclose your footage?" Dana answered carefully, "I was told to root it internally. I believed immediate external preservation was necessary." Why? Because the defendant is the chief's son. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Caprio struck the gavel once. Order. Chief Grayson, seated in the second row beside City Council, did not move, but his face lost color. By noon, the hearing had already done enormous damage. Then Elaine Mercer asked permission to introduce State's Exhibit 14, the August 2 addendum written by Officer Jason Perrin. Miles objected. Caprio overruled. Elaine read the lines about the cracked mirror, the yellow residue, the pink spoon, the signs of intoxication, and the command release. Then she called Perrin. Officer Jason Perrin entered looking like a man who had not slept. 36, Patrol Division, 2 kids, mortgage in Cranston, no appetite for becoming the center of a corruption story. He swore in, sat, tugged once at his collar. Elaine asked if he wrote the addendum. Yes. Did you observe signs that Mr. Grayson was impaired on the night of August 2? Yes. Did you request chemical testing? Perrin hesitated. I intended to. What happened? A pause so long it seemed to bend the room. Then Perrin said, I received a call. From whom? Perrin looked toward the gallery, toward the chief, toward the floor. Captain Roland Pike. What did he tell you? Stand down, released to family custody, further instructions to follow. And did those instructions come? No. Why did you not forward your addendum independently? Parents swallowed, because I was told the matter was being handled. There it was, the system in one sentence. Handled. That hearing could have ended there and still shaken Providence for months. But just before recess, Caprio received a sealed envelope from the clerk. He read the outside notation, opened it with his good hand, and unfolded a single page. The handwriting was elegant, controlled, unmistakably personal. It was from Claire Grayson, Tyler's mother, and whatever she had written made Judge Caprio's expression change for the first time all day. He did not reveal the contents immediately. He slid the letter into the file and announced, "We will recess for 30 minutes. The room loaded into speculation. What could Tyler's mother possibly say that would make a veteran judge stop mid-hearing? And why had she sent the letter to Caprio instead of to her husband or her son? By the time people filed back in, everyone knew one thing. There was more. There was a side of Tyler Grayson's life no camera had shown yet. And Judge Caprio had just seen the first piece of it. Claire Grayson had not appeared in public since the courthouse assault. That alone had people talking. She was 58, a former music teacher with careful posture, quiet manners, and a life lived mostly outside her husband's political orbit. Those who knew the family described her as warm but diminished, the sort of woman who apologized with her eyes before speaking aloud. She had stopped attending police charity galas years earlier. She rarely appeared in campaign photos. Most people assumed she simply disliked attention. The letter revealed something else. When the hearing resumed, Caprio did not read the entire message into the record, but he summarized enough to shift the emotional center of the case. "Counsel," he said, "I have received a personal letter from Mrs. Claire Grayson. I will not discuss privileged family matters in detail. However, the letter alleges a long-standing pattern of concealment, indulgence, and intimidation surrounding the defendant's conduct dating back to adolescence. It also references a prior incident involving a private school disciplinary file, a boating accident at age 19, and repeated intervention by persons acting under color of influence." A murmur rippled across the courtroom. Tyler's head snapped toward the gallery. But Claire Grayson was not there. Caprio continued, "The letter does not excuse the defendant. To the contrary, it suggests the defendant's present moral collapse was cultivated by years of consequences diverted elsewhere." Tyler's voice cracked with anger. She had no right. Caprio's gavel hit once. "You have mistaken this proceeding for a place where rights are yours alone." Silence. Then the judge said something that landed like a bell. "Parents who remove every bruise from a child's path often raise the adult who bruises others." That quote would appear on church signs, school bulletin boards, and social media captions by sunset. And suddenly Tyler Grayson was no longer just the villain in a courthouse assault story. He was the product of a machine, still guilty, still dangerous, but deeper, more frightening in a different way, because his violence was not random. It had been rehearsed by rescue. That complexity did not reduce outrage. It intensified it. Elaine Mercer then requested expansion of the record to include prior civil complaints quietly settled without admission over the last 8 years. Miles objected again, but this time even he sounded tired. Caprio allowed limited inquiry into patterns relevant to release and intimidation. What emerged made half the room stare at Malcolm Grayson instead of Tyler. At 19, Tyler had sideswiped a moored boat in Narragansett Harbor while operating a speedboat after drinking. No criminal charges, private insurance settlement. At 22, he had thrown a punch at a bouncer outside an East Side club. Security footage reportedly disappeared. Civil matter resolved. At 25, A valet driver named Hector Ruiz alleged Tyler shoved him into a concrete column after a dispute about keys. No criminal filing. Confidential payment through an intermediary. Each incident by itself could be explained away. Together, they formed a map. And the map led back to protection. Chief Malcolm Grayson finally took the stand at 2:14 p.m. No one in Providence had ever seen him look small. Even then, he was physically imposing, broad through the shoulders, uniform pressed razor sharp, service bars aligned, shoes mirror black. But when he sat under oath in front of Judge Caprio with microphones angled toward him and the city watching, authority no longer covered him the way it once had. Elaine approached slowly. "Chief Grayson, did you contact any member of the Providence Police Department regarding your son on the night of August 2? I called to ensure his safety. Did you instruct anyone to release him? No. Did you instruct anyone to delay chemical testing? No. Did you speak to Captain Pike? Yes. About what? The situation." Elaine did not blink. "Did you tell Captain Pike to handle it?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "I said the matter required discretion." There it was again, a euphemism walking around in a clean uniform. Elaine stepped closer. "Chief, are you aware that the phrase requires discretion was used in the internal memo attached to Officer Perrin's suppressed addendum?" "I have not reviewed that memo." "Are you aware that your son texted a friend, quote, 'Dad says keep cool,' shortly before assaulting Judge Caprio?" No. "Did you hear your son threaten to handle the judge if embarrassed?" Malcolm hesitated. "Ed." That hesitation was louder than a yes. "Answer the question," Caprio said. "Yes." A collective exhale crossed the room. Reporters practically lunged for keyboards. Elaine's next question was brutal in its simplicity. "And after hearing that, Chief Grayson, what action did you take?" Malcolm said nothing. She repeated it. Finally, he answered, "I believed counsel and court security were present." In other words, none. Chief Malcolm Grayson, the man trusted with a city's safety, had heard his son signal aggression toward a judge and taken no meaningful action to prevent it. Everyone in the room knew, everyone. Then came the question that broke him open. "Chief Grayson," Elaine said, voice low, "when Judge Caprio was on the floor injured, why was your first statement to your son? What did you do instead of 'Judge, are you all right?'" For the first time all day, Malcolm Grayson's composure cracked. His eyes lowered, his shoulders just slightly collapsed inward. Because there was no good answer. And everyone knew it. If you're still watching, drop a comment telling us whether Malcolm Grayson failed more as a chief or as a father. Because from this point on, the story stopped being about one violent shove and started becoming a public autopsy of what happens when love gets confused with protection. Malcolm tried anyway. "I was in shock." Elaine held his gaze. "No, Chief, you were in priority." "Not shock, priority." That line turned into the headline on 3 different news sites before the day was out. By the time the hearing ended, Judge Caprio revoked Tyler's release, ordered him remanded pending trial, and referred the conduct surrounding the August 2 incident for independent review by the Attorney General and the State Ethics Commission. He also directed that Captain Roland Pike be subpoenaed. But just before adjourning, Caprio looked down at Tyler and asked, "Mr. Grayson, is there anything you wish to say at this time?" Most defendants would have taken the silence. Most attorneys would have begged for it. Tyler leaned toward the microphone. And for one astonishing second, people thought maybe the moment had finally broken him. Maybe he would apologize. Maybe he would show something human. Instead, he said, "This is a circus." The gallery erupted in disbelief. Maria closed her eyes. Leon looked away. Even Miles Keene seemed to age. Judge Caprio studied Tyler for a long moment. Then he delivered the third line that fixed itself in public memory. "No, Mr. Grayson. A circus is where people perform for escape. This is where you begin paying to return." The gavel came down. Court adjourned. And Tyler Grayson was led out in cuffs, still angry, still entitled, still too blind to understand that the city's appetite had shifted. People no longer wanted spectacle. They wanted reckoning. But while Providence roared outside the courthouse, a quieter drama was unfolding at the Adult Correctional Institution's intake wing in Cranston. Because that night, for the first time in his life, Tyler Grayson was processed like everyone else. No side entrance, no courtesy delay, no family car waiting, no father's hand on the machinery. His Rolex was bagged and tagged, belt removed, laces removed. He stood under fluorescent lights in county-issue socks while another man coughed behind a partition and a corrections officer recited inventory in a bored voice. The cold in that room was different from outdoor cold. It was institutional, flat, unimpressed. Tyler asked for a phone call. He got one. Chief Malcolm Grayson did not answer. Claire Grayson did. What she said to her son that night would not become public until months later. But according to Tyler's own later statement, her voice was steady, almost unbearably gentle. "I love you," she told him, "but I will not lie for you anymore." Then she hung up. That, Tyler later said, was the first moment the walls actually moved. The trial date was set for November 9, 2026. Providence counted the days. Autumn came in cold. Leaves clung to gutters. Wind turned sharp off the bay. Outside the courthouse, satellite trucks became a daily feature. Commentators argued over privilege, policing, parenting, and whether Tyler Grayson should face a mandatory term without leniency for assaulting a judge. Former defendants Judge Caprio had helped over the years sent flowers, handwritten cards, and prayers. Veterans mailed letters. Teachers did too. So did parents of difficult sons. Then Captain Roland Pike flipped. He did it on October 14, after 36 hours of internal questioning and one catastrophic discovery from departmental archives. Investigators found a deleted email draft preserved on a backup server, time-stamped 11:09 p.m. on August 2, in which Pike instructed Officer Perrin to hold toxicology and route narrative through command due to family sensitivity. Attached to the draft was a forwarded text from Malcolm Grayson that simply said, "Keep this contained tonight. We'll clean it up by end the morning." Those 11 words detonated whatever was left of the chief's career. Pike negotiated cooperation. Malcolm Grayson was placed on administrative leave pending criminal inquiry. The mayor called for his resignation. The union fractured publicly. And for the first time, Providence understood this case was not just about a violent son with a temper. It was about a hierarchy that had spent years teaching him what other people were for. When Tyler saw the news from jail, he requested a private meeting with his attorney. Miles Keene later described that meeting as the first time he stopped talking like a customer and started talking like a defendant. Tyler asked one question: "Is my father going down because of me?" Miles answered honestly, "Your father is in danger because of choices your father made." That distinction mattered. At first, Tyler still tried to cling to old scripts. He asked about optics, strategy, jury pools, whether Judge Caprio might recuse. Miles shut all of it down. "You want the truth," Miles said. "Every camera in the state has already seen you become the man you are when someone says no. The only question left is whether you want to remain him." Tyler laughed once, bitter, defensive, empty. But later that night he did not sleep. Instead he replayed things. Maria hitting pavement. Sophie screaming. Judge Caprio falling. Leon's knee twisting under the takedown. His mother saying, I will not lie for you anymore. And beneath all that, the one sentence he had heard his whole life without noticing its poison. We'll handle it. By the second week of trial preparation, more letters began reaching the court. Some were vicious, some were grieving, some begged for maximum punishment, but three in particular would shape what happened later. The first was from Sophie Santos, dictated in part to a child therapist and written in careful looping print. It read, "Dear Judge Caprio, I was scared when you fell down because I thought bad people could hurt good people in court too. My mom says brave means doing the right thing even when you are scared. I hope your arm feels better. I drew you a turtle because turtles live a long time and keep going." The second was from Leon Whitaker's grandson, Malik, age 16. It read, "My grandfather says discipline is love with a backbone. I watched the video and wanted that guy buried. Then my grandfather asked me what punishment means if it teaches nothing. I still don't know. Maybe that's why judges matter." The third was from Claire Grayson, not the private letter this time, a public one filed through counsel and entered into the mitigation packet over Tyler's objections. In it she wrote, "My son was not born cruel. He was born watched, defended, excused, and repeatedly separated from the pain he caused. That is how conscience weakens. If justice comes now, let it come all the way. Do not spare him the truth in the name of saving him." Those letters did something evidence alone could not. They turned the case from a spectacle into a mirror. And when November 9 finally arrived, Providence packed Courtroom 1A as if history had sold tickets. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Video, audio, texts, testimony, the recovered August report, Captain Pike's cooperation, Malcolm's messages. There was no realistic acquittal path. Miles Keene knew it. Tyler knew it. Everyone knew it. So on the second day of trial, before jury selection finished, Tyler Grayson changed his plea. Guilty to felony assault on a judicial officer. Guilty to witness intimidation. Guilty to reckless endangerment and leaving the scene of an injury accident. Guilty to obstruction related to the August 2 cover-up. The plea did not include a guaranteed sentence. It left punishment to Judge Caprio after a full allocution and evidentiary sentencing hearing. That choice shocked people. Some thought Tyler had finally found remorse. Others thought he was gambling on Caprio's reputation for mercy. They were both partly wrong. The real reason came out when Caprio asked him directly, "Why are you changing your plea now?" Tyler stood in county khakis, hands shaking for the first time anyone had seen, and said, "Because every time I watch the footage, I hear that little girl scream." The room went still. It was the first truthful sentence he had spoken in public. But truth is not transformation, not yet. Judge Caprio knew that. He scheduled sentencing for December 18 and ordered a pre-sentence investigation, substance abuse assessment, victim impact hearing, and psychiatric evaluation focused not on insanity or diminished capacity, but on entitlement pathology, impulse control, and learned immunity to consequences. That phrase alone lit up legal blogs for days. Learned immunity to consequences. It sounded clinical. It sounded modern. It also sounded devastatingly accurate. The reports came back grim. Tyler showed severe alcohol misuse, episodic stimulant abuse, narcissistic traits reinforced by parental shielding, and a deeply underdeveloped capacity for empathic processing under threat to status. In plainer language, he had spent so long protected from discomfort that any challenge felt like humiliation, and humiliation triggered aggression. It explained him. It did not excuse him. In the weeks before sentencing, Malcolm Grayson resigned as chief. He did not hold a triumphant farewell. He issued a 2-page statement, accepted no questions, and disappeared from public view. A criminal inquiry into his conduct remained open. Captain Pike retired under pressure. Officer Perrin kept his job after full cooperation, though he would never again say he was merely following direction without hearing the hollowness of it in his own ears. Tyler, meanwhile, began attending counseling at the jail. At first he mocked it, then he argued, then he sat silent. Then, one afternoon in late November, a therapist asked him to list the names of every person harmed by his actions. He started with himself. The therapist stopped him. "No," she said, "you are not first anymore." He could not finish the list. Maria, Sophie, Judge Caprio, Leon, Officer Perrin, Dana Ruiz, his mother, his father, the city, maybe even the honest officers his family had humiliated by proving what people already suspected. He wrote the names down. His handwriting got worse with each one. That night he requested writing paper. 2 letters he drafted were never sent. One to Judge Caprio, one to Maria Santos. Both began with the same word. No. Not sorry. Ashamed. That distinction mattered. And yet, even then, nobody could predict what would happen on sentencing day, because Judge Caprio had been injured. He had been threatened. He had every legal basis to impose crushing punishment. Public appetite leaned hard in that direction. Commentators said anything less than a long prison term would look weak. Callers on radio shows demanded an example. Social media was merciless. Some wanted Tyler buried not only for what he did, but for everything privileged men had gotten away with for generations. Then December 18 arrived, and Caprio walked into a courtroom so full you could feel body heat in the walls. He wore a deep navy suit cut slightly wider to conceal the lingering stiffness in his left shoulder. His cast was gone, replaced by a rigid support brace under the sleeve. The scar above his eyebrow had faded to a pale line. He looked older than he had in September. He also looked harder. Tyler entered in a dark county blazer over jail whites. No watch, no swagger, no performance left to wear. Claire Grayson sat alone in the second row, hands folded over a wool coat. Malcolm was not there. Maria sat with Sophie, who had insisted on coming and wore a green dress with tights and a tiny turtle pin on the collar. Leon Whitaker sat on the aisle with a cane beside his chair, knee still not right, face unreadable. At 9:06, Judge Caprio began. "We are here," he said, "to determine whether punishment alone is enough, whether mercy is possible, and whether either means anything without truth." That opening sentence sent a shiver through the room. Then the victim impact statements began. Maria spoke first. She did not ask for vengeance. That surprised people. She described panic attacks at crosswalks, Sophie's fear of courthouse buildings, the humiliation of receiving threats for telling the truth, the cost of orthopedic therapy, the anger of watching powerful adults treat her pain like an inconvenience. Her voice broke only once, when she turned toward Judge Caprio and said, "My daughter learned that day that good men can be hurt in public. I need her to also learn that justice does not have to look like cruelty to be real." People in the gallery cried quietly. Then Leon Whitaker rose. Leon's statement was shorter and somehow heavier for it. "In war," he said, "you learn there are men who panic and men who pray. I believe this defendant was the second kind. Maybe he still is. But I'll tell you what I know. A man protected from consequence becomes dangerous. A man crushed without understanding becomes bitter. I don't care which hurts more. I care which leaves fewer victims behind." Then he looked at Tyler directly. "You broke trust in a room built for it. That is worse than breaking my knee." That line landed deep. If you believe that was one of the coldest truths ever spoken in a courtroom, like this video now, because the next 10 minutes delivered the confrontation everyone had waited for, and the confession nobody believed Tyler Grayson was capable of making. Judge Caprio then invited Tyler to speak. Miles Keene stood ready, perhaps to guide, perhaps to rescue if the moment went off the rails. He never needed to. Tyler rose slowly. For a second he gripped the table so hard his knuckles blanched white. Then he let go. When he spoke, the arrogance people hated was gone, but the habit of performing almost sneaked back in. Caprio saw it instantly. "Mr. Grayson," the judge interrupted. "Ted, do not give this court your polished version. Give it the one that costs you." You could feel the room lean in. Tyler swallowed. Then he started again. "I thought respect meant no one got to challenge me." He looked at Maria, then Leon, then finally Caprio. "I thought being protected meant I mattered. I thought being feared meant I was strong. I thought when people got hurt around me, someone else would clean it up." His voice roughened. "When Ms. Santos fell, I was angry she looked at me like I was a criminal. When Sophie screamed, I wanted the sound to stop, but not because of what I'd done, because it made me feel exposed. When Judge Caprio spoke to me like I was accountable, I felt small, and I would rather hurt somebody than feel small." Nobody moved. That sentence stripped him bare. Tyler continued, slower now, less like a defendant, more like a man hearing himself honestly for the first time. "I shoved you because I thought humiliation was an emergency. I threatened Maria because I wanted the truth to go away. I let my father's name become the only thing about me that had weight. And when the weight failed, I became exactly what everyone says men like me become." He took a breath that shuddered. "Dangerous." Claire Grayson covered her mouth. Tyler looked toward the empty seat where his father should have been, and said the line that later made national commentary rounds. "My father gave me a shield. I turned it into a weapon." Then he looked back at Caprio. "I am guilty in ways these charges do not fully cover." The courtroom sat in absolute silence. No one coughed, no chair creaked, even the cameras seemed quieter. Judge Caprio studied him, then asked, "And what do you believe you owe?" Tyler's eyes watered, but he did not look away. "Pain isn't enough," he said. "Embarrassment isn't enough. Prison by itself might not even be enough. I owe repair if that's possible. I owe work that lasts longer than the sentence. I owe the people I scared a life that never scares anyone again." There it was, the moment of realization. Not clean, not cinematic, not magically redemptive, just human and late and costly. Then Caprio asked the hardest question of all. "If your father could erase this today, would you let him?" Tyler broke. Not theatrically, not with shouting, just a collapse from inside outward. His shoulders folded, his face crumpled. His answer came through tears he had probably not shed in years. "No." And for the first time since the story began, people did not look at him with pure hatred. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something more unsettling. Possibility. That was when the unexpected twist arrived. Judge Caprio did not sentence immediately. Instead, he removed a folded paper from the bench file and said, "Before I impose sentence, I intend to read a portion of a letter written by Mrs. Claire Grayson." Tyler looked stunned. Claire closed her eyes. Caprio read, "If my son asks for mercy, let it not be the kind our family purchased for years. Let it be the harder kind, the kind that makes him stand inside the pain he caused until he can name it without self-pity. If prison is necessary, impose it. If service is possible, demand it. But please do not confuse destruction with justice. I have watched that confusion ruin men before." When Caprio finished, the room was raw. And then he said words nobody expected from a judge he had personally assaulted. "Mercy is not the cancellation of consequence. It is consequence with a door left open." That quote hit the city like thunder, because everyone understood what it suggested. Caprio was about to do something more complicated than revenge, and more difficult than simple leniency. He recessed for 15 minutes. The courthouse hallways flooded with speculation. Reporters whispered about split sentences, suspended terms, restorative conditions, mandatory rehab, veteran service programs, public apology orders. Social media exploded. Some people were furious at the very idea of mercy. Others said this was why Caprio mattered. Inside chambers, Caprio met briefly with probation, victim services, and counsel. No theatrics, just logistics, structure, safeguards, accountability. He emerged at 10:02, adjusted his glasses, and called everyone back to order. What followed became one of the most discussed sentencing speeches in Rhode Island legal history. "Mr. Grayson," he began, "the easy sentence here is not mercy. The easy sentence is rage. Rage would satisfy the crowd for a week. It might satisfy me for an hour. But my duty is not to indulge appetite. My duty is to protect the public, honor the victims, and tell the truth about what changes men." He turned a page. "You assaulted a sitting judge. You threatened a mother. You terrorized a child. You injured a veteran court officer. You fled the scene of an injury accident. You participated in a culture of concealment. Prison is warranted. Let there be no confusion." A few people nodded sharply. Some looked relieved. Then came the pivot. But prison, by itself, is often an excellent place to punish a man without ever forcing him to become one. Nobody expected that. Caprio continued, "I sentence you on the felony assault count to 5 years at the adult correctional institutions, with 18 months to serve and the balance suspended, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. On the witness intimidation count, 3 years suspended concurrent. On reckless endangerment and leaving the scene, 2 years suspended concurrent. On obstruction, 1 year to serve concurrent." The room processed it in layers. 18 months to serve. Real prison, not symbolic. But not the maximum. Not even close. Caprio raised a hand before reactions could boil over. "You will also pay full restitution to Maria Santos and Leon Whitaker. You will complete an inpatient substance treatment program. You will have no unsupervised contact with minors during probation until clinically recommended. You will surrender your driver's license for 3 years. You will complete 2,000 hours of supervised service divided equally between the Veterans Recovery Resource Center in Providence and the Pediatric Trauma Outreach Program designated by Ms. Santos, if she consents. You will speak on camera and in person to police cadets, prep school seniors, and court diversion participants about entitlement, violence, and consequence. Every speech will be approved in advance by probation. No monetization. No book deal. No publicity contract. Your shame is not a brand." The gallery actually gasped. Tyler stood motionless. Caprio was not done. "You will write letters of accountability, not apology, to each identified victim and to this court. Those letters will be reviewed by probation for sincerity and specificity. If they are self-excusing, they will be returned. If you violate any term, I will impose the suspended time without hesitation." Then he leaned slightly forward and delivered what many still consider the line of the entire case. "I could bury you in years, Mr. Grayson. I would rather bury the man who thought he was owed the world." That was the courtroom satisfaction moment people had waited for. Justice served, but not cheaply. Some wept, some looked furious, some looked stunned, but everybody understood they had witnessed something rare, a sentence designed not merely to punish harm but to force confrontation with it. Then came the final twist inside the courtroom. Maria Santos asked to speak once more. Caprio allowed it. Maria stood, heart pounding visibly in her throat. She turned toward Tyler. "I did not ask for mercy because I trust you," she said. "I asked because my daughter is watching. I want her to learn that accountability can rebuild what fear breaks. Don't make a liar out of me." Tyler nodded through tears. Then Leon Whitaker rose without being asked. "If he quits," Leon said, tapping his cane once on the floor, I'll be the first call your probation officer makes. But if he works, really works, I'll be there to see it. That was the compassion nobody had seen coming. Not softness. Structure. Witnessed mercy. Caprio ended the hearing with one final statement to the room. Justice without memory becomes cruelty. Mercy without structure becomes permission. This court offers neither. Gavel. Done. Tyler Grayson was taken back into custody to begin serving time. Outside, Providence erupted again. Some called the sentence brilliant. Some called it weak. Some said only Caprio could get away with something that morally ambitious. Editorial boards argued for days. Cable pundits reduced it to sound bites. But on the street, in barber shops, classrooms, kitchen tables, and police locker rooms, the real conversation was harder. Could a man like Tyler Grayson actually change? Or had Judge Caprio simply given a privileged defendant one last elegant escape hatch? The answer did not come quickly. It came in pieces, and not all of them were flattering. The first 3 months of Tyler's sentence were ugly. He detoxed badly. He got into one shouting match in the unit over television. He refused group therapy twice. He wrote one letter probation flagged as self-centered and manipulative. He was told to rewrite it, then rewrite it again. At the Veterans Recovery Resource Center intake interview for his future service plan, conducted inside the facility by clinical director Naomi Feld, he gave polished phrases about giving back. Naomi, a 50-year-old Army nurse veteran with the stare of someone who had watched men bleed for real, shut him down immediately. "Don't audition goodness for me," she said. "Tell me the ugliest true thing." Tyler sat silent for almost a minute. Then he said, "When the judge hit the floor, part of me was glad." Naomi nodded once. "Good, start there." That was when the actual work began. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button because this next stretch is where most stories lie. They show the sentence, then skip the grind, but real redemption is boring before it is beautiful. It is repetition. It is humiliation without applause, and Tyler Grayson had years of poison to drain. By month 6, he had completed treatment modules, begun trauma-informed anger work, and started writing accountability statements that no longer centered his own pain first. He learned the names of the veterans whose files he would one day help organize. He read victim impact literature. He sat through group sessions with men who had no interest in his last name. One called him Badge Boy for weeks. Tyler hated it. Then he stopped reacting. Then he admitted he had earned worse. At month 9, something happened that almost nobody outside the supervision team learned about until later. A younger inmate named Raul suffered a panic attack during evening lockdown after receiving news of his brother's overdose. Officers were delayed handling another incident down the tier. Tyler, who had once treated other people's distress as background noise, recognized the signs from treatment sessions and called for help instead of mocking him like he might have before. He sat outside the cell and kept speaking until medical staff arrived. No cameras, no reporters, no social media clip. Just a choice. Probation noted it. Judge Caprio would eventually read that note. Tyler was released after 11 months to a structured reentry phase based on credit for treatment completion and overcrowding adjustments permitted under state policy. Some people were outraged when they heard. Caprio had anticipated that possibility, which is why the sentence had never depended on incarceration alone. The real burden was outside. For the next 14 months, Tyler's schedule was brutal. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at the Veterans Recovery Resource Center from 6:30 a.m. to 2:00 p.m. filing records, transporting donated supplies, cleaning common spaces, sitting with veterans during intake when requested, and listening. Not talking, listening. Tuesdays and Thursdays at Maria Santos's hospital outreach program, working logistics for pedestrian safety workshops and family support kits for children after trauma events. He was not allowed near pediatric patients without supervision. Maria insisted on that. Caprio supported it. Boundaries were part of mercy. 3 evenings a week, outpatient counseling and sobriety meetings. Once a month, ethics presentations to police cadets and court diversion youth, where Tyler was required to use his full name, describe his crimes in plain language, and answer questions without self-defense. The first time he spoke to cadets at the Providence Public Safety Complex, someone in the back asked, "Did your father ever actually love you, or just your image?" The room went dead. Tyler took a long breath and answered, "He loved me in the language he knew. The problem is that language made me dangerous." That honesty stunned people. It also reached Malcolm. Father and son had not spoken in nearly a year when Malcolm Grayson finally requested a supervised meeting through counsel. Tyler agreed. They met in a family services conference room with gray walls and a humming vending machine. Malcolm looked older, softer in the jaw, the armor of office gone. No uniform, no polished persona, just a man in a navy peacoat and tired eyes. At first they talked around the case, whether Claire, the house being sold,